Hi, my name's Phil. I like talking about politics, and in this video I like to discuss the moves of the Welsh Government in trying to ensure the survival of their Irish seaports in the wake of the devastation to all things UK that is Brexit. But first, if you'd like to be notified of daily news and politics, please subscribe to the channel and click the bell notification icon. So having a slightly Celtic day today, going from Wales, and then later on today we're going to Scotland. But here we are. As a result of the quite hideous trade barriers thrown up by Brexit, alternative routes have of course been set up to help freight passing between the Republic of Ireland and the rest of the EU. Now, quite a lot of this haulage would simply have passed across the land bridge of Britain, meaning a lot of lorries using, for example, Welsh ports. However, business at those ports has been devastated since the start of the year. It's one thing for Brexit to create huge delays involving trade between the EU and the UK, mostly from Britain to the EU. But it's a bit of a kick in the teeth if it also creates delays in trade from the EU to the EU. So various routes have been set up and the demand for them exceeded expectations, to bypass Britain to get things from Ireland to the rest of the EU. And the haulage industry explains that although it's still cheaper to cut across Britain, it just takes too long now. And as I've lived near ports for almost all of my independent adult life and have been driving along the main road routes to them, I've often seen a lot of lorries, and some of them you can quite clearly see because they have on their back which places they visit. And you can sometimes see them and there's not a single place in Britain on there. They're not picking up or dropping off in Britain, they're just passing through. And when I tried to explain the impact of this loss, limited Brexit supporters didn't think it was a big deal. They couldn't understand how it harms us for them not to be visiting us, not to be on our roads, using our facilities and businesses. But the Welsh Government understand full well. So they have now published a report explaining the problems and what they intend to do about it. I had to smirk at the first page because it refers to the government lie about volumes across the UK returning to near normal, with near normal in quotation marks. Of course, the movement of goods has not approached anywhere near normal. Simply the number of lorries passing through some of our ports. But as I've remarked before, the vast majority of those lorries have been empty. So it's not a good measure of the amount of trade. It would only be a good measure of amount of trade if the same proportion of lorries were empty as before. Only the actual trade figures are going to show us what's happening. And as we can say, we've only this month been seeing the figures for January. So we know there's a bit of a delay there. And the figures so far have been devastating. And there was another point of interest early on in the report, just as an aside. It said that the direct routes from Ireland to the rest of the EU had increased by 242%. Okay, get that? Absolutely understand that. But then it said that volumes had increased by 5% from Britain to Northern Ireland. Now, in the context of the fuss about the Northern Ireland Protocol, isn't it interesting that the volume of traffic, and that is presumably what they're talking about here, not goods but traffic, lorries, if that's actually increased from Britain to Northern Ireland, is that because the government are not implementing the protocol and hauliers are seeing the crossing as a weak point in the Brexit system? I don't know. I'll have to try and keep my eye on that one to see what the explanation is there. But if it is being seen as a weak point, then you can draw no other conclusion other than people are using the route to get goods from Britain to the EU via Northern Ireland, which will of course mean that the Northern Ireland Protocol becomes especially important right now if people are using it for that. But anyway, back to Wales. And the government have been working with the Irish government to try and boost confidence in the land bridge. When I say the government in this case, I mean the Welsh Government. And that means that they want to help implement systems that will mean it becomes as good or better to pass from Ireland to other parts of the EU through Britain once again. Because that's the only thing that's going to get these ports used. It's not like you can try and encourage different types of business for these Welsh ports. Now, obviously, the Welsh Government can't actually do anything about those systems in itself. They are limited in what they can do. But it is setting itself the task of trying to bring the UK and Irish governments together on the issue in order to help hauliers navigate the old route without lots of unnecessary delays. Because that's really the thing. Like I said, the hauliers are saying, you know, the British land bridge, it does work out cheaper if you can get rid of those delays. Now, I have to say, this may well be the third or even the fourth thing I've talked about this week where a prominent group, a government in this case, has tried to ask the UK government to address issues that are hurting the British economy. And it's not like they're asking Boris Johnson to just come up with solutions. It's not like they're saying, look, we've got this problem here. You made the mess, you sort it out. Because that would be fair enough. But actually, solutions are being provided. But they're not exactly in line with boneheaded Brexit mentality. That's the problem. I mean, we had a situation at PMQs last week where a Conservative MP asked the Prime Minister to get the UK to join an existing scheme, one that already exists for some countries outside of the EU, to help our meat exporters. It would work. Johnson completely avoided answering the question. He didn't just say, no, I'm not going to do this. He just wouldn't answer the question. From one of his own MPs. He will not work with concerned Conservative MPs. He won't work with industry leaders. I'm afraid he's certainly not going to work with a Labour government in Wales. Even though the solutions in this case don't necessarily work against the Brexit mentality even. For example, the report highlights the complexity of having two systems to move goods between Wales and Ireland when we could just jointly develop a single system that can manage the process both ways efficiently. It would be quicker, easier and cheaper to use. And it wouldn't change anything. It's not asking the UK government to work closely with the EU. That would be lovely, but it's not even asking them to do that. Just develop a system. Because it's worth pointing out yet again that not all of the trade difficulties we're having are down to Brexit in concept. Leaving the customs union and single market absolutely means trade barriers. You can't get away from that. They will always be there, even when we do develop much better systems. But that doesn't mean that the systems needed to cope with those barriers have to be complex or lengthy to use. It absolutely makes sense for the UK and Irish governments to work together on developing a common system that supports trade between their territories because it's beneficial to both sides. And Ireland are certainly up for it and have said so in a joint statement with the Welsh Government. But we need to move on from the idea that Boris Johnson cares about the wider British economy or jobs at all. If something hits the Tory heartlands, sure, he may act, but not anywhere else. We've seen this twice already recently. Last autumn, if you recall last autumn, opposition parties, including the SNP and Labour, who form governments in Scotland and Wales respectively, wanted the government to extend furlough. The government refused. No, it's ending on this date. That's all there is to it. It's ending. Then, when it transpired that we were going to need to lock down again and that lots of people in the Tory stronghold of the south of England would be losing their jobs without furlough, all of a sudden the government announced that furlough would be extended. I mean, it was too late for many jobs because furlough had technically ended. It was a few days later. But no, of course we're going to, furlough, no problem. Yeah, we should have more furlough. Because the jobs were essentially elsewhere. They acted too late to save jobs elsewhere. Then we saw it again this year, when it was pointed out that implementing the intended checks on EU goods from July would create significant food shortages, not just in Northern Ireland, but in the south of England as well. All of a sudden they U-turned on those plans. They are literally giving the green light to smugglers just so those in Tory heartlands do not see the devastating impact of Conservative policies. But they make little to no effort when the effects are elsewhere. So I have no doubt at all that Boris Johnson will not do anything to help the situation. So those people whose jobs depended upon that land bridge freight are going to find themselves increasingly abandoned, I fear. Because the alternative routes will only continue to grow the longer we fail to act. And we will fail to act. If it becomes politically hot enough for the Conservatives, Johnson might take the Welsh Government up on their suggestion of a working group to discuss the issues. But like all the other Brexit discussion groups, it will be at best fruitless right now and at worst an excuse to start arguments. But those are my thoughts. Let me know yours in the comments below. Hope you found the video interesting. If you did, don't forget to click the like button. And if you'd like to support the channel further, please also click the Patreon link for details. And until next time, I'll see you later.